Our Law and Justice segment tonight, the city of Chicago recorded 762 murders in 2016. 762 people died. That's the highest number of homicides Chicago has seen in 2 decades. It's more murders than New York and Los Angeles combined. It's more than 2 people killed each day, every day, all year long. Now, Democrats are blaming the guns here, which I find preposterous, but let's look at what actually is causing this violence. Joining me now, nationally renowned forensic criminologist and author of The Truth Behind the Black Lives Matter Movement and the War on Police, Dr. Ron Martinelli. Dr. Ron, good to see you.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year to you, too. Dr. Ron, you're the expert on this sort of thing, on violence against police officers here, violence in general, gun violence. Why such a high rate of murder in the city of Chicago?
Well, for 2 reasons. Number one, they don't have a viable stop and frisk policy. And so the police hands are actually tied right now. But number two, and more importantly, they have a criminal justice system there in a sentencing structure that is just in shambles. It's a disgrace. If you take a look at the profiles of these people that are murdering other people in the city of Chicago, 78% of which are Black homicide victims, you will see that they are recidivists. What does that word mean? That means that they are repeat offenders. These are people that get caught with guns. They're gang members. Most of this is narcotics related, gang related gun crime. And basically the courts have just created a revolving door environment for them. And so they keep coming back out on the street and committing more and more violent crimes.
Right, and I believe the city of Chicago is talking about adding a significant number more cops to their police force. Is this going to solve the problem, or is this the same as throwing money at something without actually addressing the underpinning of the issue?
No, more police officers aren't necessarily going to solve the problem. What the police need is a viable system that allows them to uphold constitutional case law, Terry versus Ohio, 1968, stop and frisk based on reasonable suspicion and or probable cause. That's what they need. This is not racial.
Well, Dr. Ron, who's standing in the way of them enforcing that? Is that up to the mayor of Chicago? Is that up to the police superintendent? Who's neglecting their responsibility to enforce this?
Well, don't forget that every police chief and superintendent serves at the discretion of the mayor and or the city council or the alderman. And in this particular case, the superintendent of police is taking his cues directly from Ron Emanuel, the mayor.
Right, and we know that he's been one who's come out very recently and said that Chicago will continue to be a sanctuary city. Dr. Ron, in my opinion, that's one of the many factors that goes into why there's been so much violence in the city of Chicago. Sanctuary cities are essentially an invitation to illegal immigrants who've already committed crimes and who are trying to hide from the law, hide from deportation. It's saying, come right in, you're not going to be caught here.
No, that's exactly right. And, I was born and initially raised in the city of San Francisco. I did the majority of my police career in the San Francisco Bay Area, and the politics of that city, which are exactly like the politics of Los Angeles and the politics of Chicago with respect to sanctuary cities, is just disgraceful. You have a lot of illegal alien criminals. Many of them are gang members from serious gangs, both in Mexico and in Central America, that are running loose on the streets there. They're shooting up the place, and the police are basically powerless to do anything about it. And the sheriff of the city and county of San Francisco, because it's a city and county, will not cooperate with federal authorities and ICE.
Right. And I think another thing, then this is back to the city of Chicago here. When we're talking about solutions here, I think it's more important than ever when we see this staggering number. 762 people died of homicide in 1 year. It's terrible. That's more than 2 people every day that have been gunned down. It's more important than ever to reach across the aisle here. Dr. Ron, I don't understand the narrative coming from the left when it comes to gun control. They want stricter gun control laws for Chicago. They say that more laws on the books are going to prevent this. They point to the number that I believe it was 8,300 illegal guns were recovered in Chicago in 2016. And they say that's the problem. Those guns are the problem. And they're completely ignoring the statistics that say that cities and states that enact concealed carry laws significantly reduce the number of violent crime and murder.
You're exactly right, Liz. Thank you for bringing that up. The left looks at this as a gun issue. Actually, what it is a behavior issue. Unless you can modify the behavior, I mean, and Chicago has some of the strictest gun laws in the United States. I think everybody knows that.
Right. I think that's why it's no coincidence that they also have one of the highest murder rates. There's nothing to stop the violence.
Because their sentencing structure is a shambles, and also the police hands are tied, and you just can't do that. If you take a look at a city that is actually smaller than Chicago. I mean, if you look at Manhattan, if you look at the city of New York, which has significantly reduced their gun crime, significantly reduced their murder rate, and you compare the policing strategies of New York to those of Chicago, I mean, New York has a phenomenal police department there. They have good strategies. They have good police management there, and they're doing a wonderful job. The city of Chicago could learn a lot from the city of New York and some other major cities that we have in the United States where we have a successful reduction in our homicide and gun crime rates.
Right, and I think that brings up the question of getting inside the mind of Mayor Emanuel here and asking why. If this is not just a liberal versus conservative argument here, if this is about the safety and security of the people of the city of Chicago, why doesn't he look to these other cities that are doing it successfully? Why doesn't he do what's necessary to protect his people?
Well, I think one of the reasons is Black Lives Matter has a tremendous presence and a chapter in the city of Chicago. He's looking at his base, but he's not doing his base and the Black community any favors whatsoever. 78% of all the homicide victims were Black, and if I could put that into context for the viewers for a minute, the city of Chicago has lost more people in the last since 2009 to gun violence than all of the military personnel that have been killed in action in the war on terror in Afghanistan and Iraq, of which only 9% of those soldiers that were killed were Black. So it actually means, if you put it in context, that it's safer to be a Black soldier in a war-torn area in the Middle East than walking around on the streets of Chicago. And that is simply disgraceful.
Right.